And welcome back to Urgent Care with Minda Wilson. Minda's guest today is Tal Givoly with MedAdvisor.
Hey, Tal, it's a pleasure to meet you.
But the pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
I've been reading a lot about MedAdvisor, and it's an amazing program that you've put together. What made you come up with the idea for it?
Well, thanks. Each of us founders actually experienced something in their own lives that made them realize of this problem. I saw friends of mine, their daughter had leukemia, and besides dealing with her illness, I noticed how much they were dealing with the mountains of health information and trying to make sense of it all. My partner, caregiver for his mother that had cancer, Professor Stephen Kaplan, has been seeing patients, like many doctors around the country, coming into them with piles of printout of nonsense that they learn online, wasting their time with false notions. So we saw it both from the patient, caregiver, and practitioner's, physician's perspective.
But it's interesting to me that you recognize this problem, but it's a long way from problem to implementation of the amazing system that you've developed. So take me through a little bit the process that you went through to sort of figure out how to solve this problem.
Sure. We did a design perspective of thinking about what would be the ideal utopian solution. We thought, okay, so people are coping with illness. They go to the internet. There's too much health information. They don't know what to do. What would the ideal solution look like? And we basically wrote that down. So in an ideal solution, the person would get all the latest information that matters to them right now, something that would bring them up to speed very quickly, but only the options that are really currently available to that situation. But things don't stay the same. They don't, the patient doesn't stay in the same situation, and treatment options are changing all the time as science advances. So from that point on, you need to get all the updates. So where do you get all the updates? From all the research, all the clinical trials, all the guidelines, warnings, community resources, anything that gets published. But vet all that and see what of that is clinically relevant and to whom, and interpret it in a language that people can understand, because it doesn't help if I give you a link to a PhD level article if you can't understand it. And then finally get the doctor and the patient on the same page, because if the patients are more empowered than the doctors, it could frustrate the situation. So we thought that would be the ideal solution, and then we went ahead and just decided to build it.
So when you say you decided to build it, you did the information gathering, the curating of the information, and then you made it available to both the patients and the doctors so that they could share the information that would help them in their decision making.
Yeah, but since it's such a big task, we decided we had to do this disease by disease or condition by condition. We can't do this for every single medical condition up front, because when we, for instance, scan all the new published literature, there's 400,000 research papers published each year. So we limit that per condition. So in breast cancer, for instance, there's 19,500. So we cover that, and so on. So every condition we add a new body of knowledge that we continuously mine.
But that sounds like a very expensive process. And what you're doing has such significant public benefit. How did you get people on board to help you finance this venture?
Basically, we're funded by our investors, and now by the value that we can create to some of the industry players to support the business. So we keep the service as a free resource to patients, but of course we have to figure out how to monetize.
So the thing that I'm looking at and would be interesting to our audience is that everyone who experiences a catastrophic illness looks at it as an overwhelming problem in the same way you looked at the offering of MedAdvisor. And then you sort of took an approach to it that allowed you to develop something that would lead to a successful outcome, which is the appropriate information for the individuals you wanted to help, sort of solve the problem of how to cope with their disease and how MedAdvisor would help them do that.
Well, since we did MedAdvisor, not everybody needs to build another thing like this. Everyone that sees an issue or challenges in the world that we could all address, each of us has specific capabilities and skills and resources to be able to do what they can. I'm a tech guy. I know I've developed software all my life. So I kind of know what we can do with software. And I thought that by doing something like MedAdvisor, I'm never going to be a doctor, but I could help millions of people find, accelerate scientific adoption or the latest scientific knowledge into medical practice and care for patients.
So let's say you're faced with a catastrophic illness or a loved one is faced with a catastrophic illness. You have to identify the appropriate medical platform for treatment for yourself, and then you have to evaluate the treatment options that are being presented to you. And so your tool allows people to do this, correct?
Yes.
How do they use the tool to get that information?
Okay, sure. So we work only post-diagnosis. Somebody has to have a diagnosis. We cover about 18 different disease categories, but not everything. So if diabetes or hypertension or the most prevalent cancers or most of urology and cardiovascular disease. So you could go into MedAdvisor, you create a profile, you create an account. It's a free and private account. We don't share your identifiable information with anybody without your explicit consent. And there you tell us more information about who is coping with illness, age, gender, dimensions, ethnicity, and for every medical condition that this person is suffering from, the specific disease status, treatment history, and current treatment. It takes about between 3 and 7 minutes to fill in this profile. There's no text to write. It's just to choose from options. And then we create for you a personalized refresher, which is really all the treatment options currently available and where's the research going for your situation. And following that, we start giving you additional information. But the first thing is you need to create a profile. You need an email address and you need a web browser. You could do that on desktop or on a mobile phone. And then you get all this information, and you continue to get updates whenever there's new science or new clinical trials or new research that is relevant to you.
And if they have questions about the information you've provided, how do they address those questions?
We have tens of thousands of subscribers, and they talk to each other on the platform and also with doctors on the platform. So people could ask questions, and they do very often. And they chat with each other. And these are people that have been in their situation or are in their situation or a very similar situation. And they could also ask us. There's an ability to tell us what you're looking for or ask help, and we do that as well.
So not only are you providing relevant information for people, but you're also providing a support network for people who have the specific issue that other people like them are dealing with. Not only do you keep abreast of what's going on, but you feel that as the future progresses, that the amount of research produced in this country will continue, and that we may be focusing not just on pharmaceuticals, but on wellness options now that wellness is covered under the Affordable Care Act. There are some incentives to look at that and see how it prevents diseases.
We understand that, increasingly the most important causes of death are preventable these days. Okay, not completely, of course, but still lifestyle has a great impact in diseases like hypertension and diabetes, heart disease in general, our sedentary, our diet, and these aspects are getting some attention. There are areas, by the way, where digital health could be a major intervention. It could help with lifestyle nudges and changes and motivations to change. So I see our wellness being addressed much more as well. And yes, the Affordable Care does create motivation in order to both to address those aspects and to do some research there.
And that MedAdvisor is a very valuable tool for people to consider in taking care of and helping them make those choices. So I really want to thank you very much for your time today. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's a very interesting discussion. And just for your audience, MedAdvisor is spelled with a Z, MEDIVIZOR.com. It's free, private. If you don't want it, you could always unsubscribe. There's no negative consequences to that.
This is Minda Wilson for Urgent Care. We'll catch you next time.